children?
Well, we have to think about the fact that our current shelter system isn't particularly accommodating to families, so we have to actually stop putting money into these very expensive top-down solutions like we are focused on, and look at more community-based solutions. First of all, we have schools. Why do the kids who don't have homes, the youth, I'm sorry, Home and Youth Commission reminded me that they're youth, not children and kids. Why youth can't stay? I mean, we have to look at all of our resources as a society, churches, schools, every available resource to make sure that people are sheltered. That said, there are things that we can do as a community for a fraction of the cost of the institutional models that we're looking at. I am personally engaged in helping women right now who've been displaced out of tent communities get into temporary mobile shelters and tiny homes on public land so they can actually get themselves in from out of doors and have a stable home where they can sleep at night, lock the door, and be free from the sexual assault and abuses that they're experiencing at the same rates as LGBTQ youth. We need to make sure that our most vulnerable are protected and that they are in secure areas and that they have a place to go. We cannot leave them out of doors. We cannot wait. We have to use community-based solutions that are temporary and safe immediately.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Sean Davis.
Yeah, we have to keep our families together, you know. A lot of the temporary housing units we have, they'll take the father and say, you have to go over there, and then they take the mom and the child and you go there. I mean, the families need to stay together first off. The temporary housing that we're building right now needs to be for families, for children, because and their families. Right now, the Sears Armory is going to be closing. That was one of our emergency solutions was, hey, this is an empty building. Let's get people in there. We're doing it, but it was only set for 6 months, and that's not ready to go away unless we extend it. We have to do that more. Yeah, we're at a state of emergency, but I think that instead of waiting around for the county and the state to do it, Oregon will follow Portland. We can do it. Do it. And then have them say, you know what, you can't do that. Like, what is wrong with housing people? Let's do that first. There's a lot of county and city land that we can use. I've been exploring putting together a conversation with the community to use Wapato. I know it was a low security prison, but it also has medical, dental, alcohol, and drug addiction resources out there. And it needs to be redone. It needs to be peer-driven community, but it can be done. We can do that.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to hear from Deborah Harris.
Focusing on your question, I think you were referring to the statistics regarding children 11 years old and 5 years old and under living out there. I work in an area that helps to enhance the livability of Oregonians. And one thing that I would do is, first of all, kind of educate the city of Portland. Oftentimes, we see the city, we see the shininess of the city, and so many of us don't realize that there's another side. There's a tale of two cities. So we need to educate the city that there's a different side, but it's possible they don't see what's going on like we recognize what's going on. And then for the homeless children who are out there with their parents, usually they would link with the Department of Human Services. So as mayor, I would make sure that we have met with the Department of Human Services, and once we have several of these names of people who are out there, let's find out, what does your record say, Human Services? Why are these children out there? Why are these parents out there? Because there's a reason why they're not getting any support, but we want to find out the reason they're not getting any support from the Department of Human Services. And if not, then we may need to put a little funding there. Thank you.
And Jesse Sponberg, how would you resolve homelessness, especially when it comes to children?
So this is something I'm uniquely able to talk on. I spent the last decade feeding homeless children and helping invent programs like Free Hot Soup that do direct action to feed families on the streets. I spent last night in an encampment that was in some bushes hidden along the Springwater corridor. You know what's crazy is the resiliency of humanity that just wants to live. So first thing we need to do is leave those people the hell alone. Like David said, we need to stop criminalizing them. We need to be facilitating them. There are people who are out here on the streets, the only crime is trying not to die. But we have this failed city policy. But what I really want to talk about, and this is the reason you'll never catch me on KATU debate, is because the problem here is the banks. Okay? Everybody wants to go, oh, we need bigger shelters, we need more shelters, we need special shelters. Screw a shelter. The only reason that you have a shelter is so you don't get eaten by lions in the middle of the night. And by that yardstick, we're doing great, right? truth is, nobody's ever gonna get a job out of a shelter. Nobody's ever gonna get their family and get kicked out and go do something productive with their day when they have to leave at 7 o'clock at night. Or when you have to stand in this line where half the people have tuberculosis or whatever, and you have to expose your family to all this various 2016 germs and bugs that are going around. Sister, you gotta let me keep with this. So everybody wants to build more stuff
Gotta
living
keep
at the
it fair,
bottom.
too.
Huh?
I gotta keep it fair.
Oh, I know. I got a clock in my head. I know how long you give everybody else.
30
No,
seconds
second,
over.
30 seconds. All right, so,
You got an extra 30 seconds already.
30 seconds. Okay, so this
No, you already got it, Jesse.
There's 700 vacant houses that are bank only in Portland, Oregon. Those are homes, long-term family homes, where people could be living. If somebody cared about attacking the banks instead of building more shelters, like Jules wants to do, or when you look at the list, everybody's pulling $100,000 a year to work on these committees.
Thank you very
Come on,
much,
Portland.
Jesse.
So
Thank you very much.
That's
We're
directly leads
moving
us
on.
to, we're
Thank you,
moving to
Jesse.
section 2, which is housing. Christine will.
So this one is talking about city planning. We're going to start with, is that? Yeah, okay, so Portland has a comprehensive plan for development. It's called the comprehensive plan. The housing goal in the plan is, and this is a quote from the plan, enhance Portland's vitality as a community at the center of the region's housing market by providing housing of different types, tenure, density, sizes, costs, and locations that accommodate the needs, preferences, and financial capabilities of current and future households, end quote. According to the Oregonian, since 2010, the average rent in Portland has jumped 41%. That the average now is $1,242 a month. In fact, the average rent jumped by 14% in February alone. This increase is largely due to Portland's low vacancies and high demand for rentals in the market. So one other quote from the comprehensive plan is, balanced communities strive for livable mixed-income neighborhoods. Livable mixed-income neighborhoods throughout Portland that collectively reflect the diversity of housing types, tenures, rental and ownership, and income levels of the region. So the plan is full of striving and encouragements for housing diversity and affordability. I want to go again down the line and give you each 45 seconds to say, how would you make that happen? I know it's a big question, but it's what's on everyone's mind. So I'm going to start with, I'm going in order of how you were asked. So I'm going to start from the bottom of the list this time with Sean Davis.
Oh, good. All right. So, yeah, Oregon Comprehensive Plan. I'm so happy that you brought it up. I try to bring it up every time. That's our plan about how we see Portland in 20 years. And how we're seeing Portland in 20 years is we're letting so you have the metro core, then you have the corridors and the city centers, and then you have the rest of Portland. Right now, our plan is to put 50% of our resources in developing and our focus into redeveloping the metro core, and then 30% in the city centers and the corridors, and then another 20% for the rest of Portland. I want to switch it. I want it to go back the other way. Right now, what we're doing is we're letting desirability drive development instead of having development drive the desirability. Because half of Portland, we're talking about complete neighborhoods, half of Portland do not live in complete neighborhoods. And you know which half, right? It's out here. If we can start completing the neighborhoods on the outside of Portland and spreading that desirability out, then we wouldn't have these huge rent spikes because people would actually want to live out in 82nd or in North Portland or in far southeast because they're great places. Bud Clark said it, that the true treasure of Portland is in the livability of our neighborhoods, but we forgot that. And we went for the short buck instead of the long-term goal. And so I want to change that around. I want to put 50% in the outside of Portland, 30%, and then only 20% in the middle. Why redevelop something that's already developed?
I want to do a follow-up on that because you mentioned East Portland and how should we be thinking about displacement? Because that's really what's happening when you talk about the city core.
Because we have to put rent stabilization in first.
But the state won't let us do that.
We just passed inclusionary zoning, that's part of it. And as far as letting it happen, let's make it happen. Because if we don't do that, that's so important, because if we don't do that, all we're doing is kicking people further out. We have to have that in place before we actually start making those neighborhoods good, because same thing will happen to what's already happening in the metro core and in